I never thought a routine visit to the bank would reveal the deepest betrayal from my own flesh and blood. My hand was trembling, not from age, not from illness. It was that kind of trembling your body does when your instincts scream that something's off. My daughter, Kelly, slid a pen toward me across the bank desk with that too sweet voice she saves for when she's hiding something. "Just sign here, Mom. It's a simple update. Won't take long." Behind me stood Dean, her husband. He placed his hand firmly on my shoulder. Not gently, not kindly, like he was reminding me who was in charge. "We've got lunch reservations," he said. "Let's not make this difficult." Lunch? They hadn't invited me to a meal in over a year. The young bank teller, nervous bun, wedding ring too new, glanced up, then back down at the documents. That's when I did it. Quietly, while pretending to search my purse, I scribbled a message on a checkbook slip and slid it across the desk. "Help me. This isn't my choice." She froze for a second, eyes widening just enough. Then she nodded and walked away, like nothing had happened. Less than a minute later, the branch manager appeared. Older man, silver hair, thick glasses. Calm, professional, and curious. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said, offering a kind smile, "would you mind joining me in my office? Just to go over a few details." Kelly opened her mouth to protest, but the manager had already waved at security. The glass doors locked with a soft click. Dean's hand stiffened on my shoulder before letting go. I followed the manager down a narrow hallway, the tremble in my legs matching the one in my chest. When we entered his office, he gently closed the door and motioned for me to sit. He looked at the note. Then looked at me. "Ma'am," he said softly, "can you tell me what's going on?" I wanted to speak, but nothing came out at first. "How do you explain that your own daughter, your baby girl, is trying to trick you into signing away everything you've worked for? How do you explain the shame of being used, not by a stranger, but by the person you once rocked to sleep?" I swallowed hard, heart pounding. The air smelled like printer ink and lemon cleaner. "I'm not sure what those papers are," I finally said, "but something about this doesn't feel right. I didn't ask for any of this." He nodded slowly, then reached under his desk and pressed a button. A soft magnetic click echoed from the door. "You did the right thing, Mrs. Whitmore. We're going to take a look at these documents together. You're not alone in this." And just like that, for the first time in a long time, I felt like someone truly saw me, not as some confused old woman, not as a mother who owed the world to her children. Just me. What Kelly didn't know was that I'm not the same woman she used to manipulate. Not anymore. My hands may tremble, but this time, they tremble with rage. And when a mother's heart breaks, it doesn't shatter, it sharpens. Alone in the bank manager's office, I began to face the bitter truth. My daughter had been planning this for a long time. The moment the door clicked shut behind us, the quiet settled heavy in the room. The manager, Mr. Franklin, his name tag read, sat across from me with a cautious kindness, like I might break if he looked at me too directly. But I wasn't fragile. Not anymore. I was furious. "I'm sorry for the secrecy, Mrs. Whitmore," he said. "But your note was alarming. We have protocols in place for situations like this." "Situations like what?" I asked, though I already knew. He pulled a stack of documents from a folder, turned them toward me. "Your daughter and her husband presented these as directives from you. They said you were feeling overwhelmed managing your finances and had asked them to take over as trustees of your estate." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd, so audacious, that I couldn't help it. "I've been paying my bills since I was 16, I said. "I managed my household, taught school for 40 years, survived widowhood, and put 2 daughters through college. If I'm confused about anything, it's how I raised a child who thinks I'm this gullible." Mr. Franklin nodded. "The documents were concerning. They attempt to declare you mentally unfit to manage your own assets. If signed, they would give your daughter and son-in-law complete control over your accounts, property, and future financial decisions." My throat went dry. So it was worse than I thought. Kelly hadn't brought me here to help with estate updates. She'd orchestrated a quiet coup, one pen stroke away from stealing my life while I was still alive. For a split second, I saw her as a toddler again, smiling up at me, her hands sticky from chocolate milk, asking me to braid her hair like a princess. I shook it off. That child was gone. "I want a copy," I said, "of everything they gave you." "You'll have it before you leave," he promised. "Would you like us to notify the authorities?" I hesitated. I didn't want Kelly arrested. I didn't want to see her name in the paper or explain this to my grandkids. I just wanted to understand how she got here. How I let her get here. No, I said quietly. Not yet. But I do need help. A lawyer. Someone who works with people my age. An elder law attorney, he said. I know just the one. I left that office with a manila envelope under my arm and a fire in my chest. Outside, Kelly and Dean were pacing like sharks. Kelly's smile froze when she saw me holding the documents. You okay, Mom? She asked, too quickly. I'm fine, I said, slipping past her without another word. Dean tried to stop me with a hand on my elbow. I pulled away. I'd allowed too many hands on me in the name of family. That ends now. The hurt didn't start at the bank. It started quietly, in my own kitchen, 3 days before everything fell apart. It was a Tuesday morning, the kind where the sun spills softly through the curtains and everything feels almost peaceful. Kelly had come over early, said she wanted to make me breakfast. That should have tipped me off right then and there. Kelly doesn't cook unless she wants something. I was standing at the sink, rinsing blueberries, when she set a plate of toast and scrambled eggs in front of me. We should really go over your estate paperwork sometime, Mom, she said, so casually it barely registered. I laughed. Let me guess, Dean's idea? She smiled without looking at me and rinsed her hands. You're not getting any younger, Mom. It's better to be prepared. I nodded slowly, stirring my tea. I remember the way the spoon clinked against the ceramic mug. That sound stayed with me. Prepared for what, exactly? I asked. Oh, just the usual, she said, waving her hand like it was no big deal. In case something happens. I mean, we'd need to know where everything is, how to handle it all. It's just good planning. I wanted to believe her. That's the part that stings the most. I wanted to believe she was just being thoughtful, that this was her way of stepping up as the eldest daughter. Maybe she was trying to help. Maybe she wasn't fully aware of the path she was taking. But Dean always knew exactly what he was doing. Looking back now, I realize how many little things had changed in the weeks leading up to the bank. Kelly had been visiting more often, asking to help with my mail, offering to run errands for me. One day, she even cleaned out the drawer where I keep my bills, said she was organizing. I didn't think much of it. I was grateful, honestly. Grateful for the company. Grateful not to feel so alone. But that's how it happens, isn't it? Not all betrayals crash in like storms. Some arrive like kindness. They smile at you. They call you, Mom. They pour your tea. I'd spent the last 3 years since George passed trying to hold everything together. I made casseroles for the church potlucks. I clipped coupons. I watered the plants he used to take care of. And when the loneliness crept in, I told myself I was lucky, I still had my girls. Now I see it differently. Maybe I had held on too tightly. Maybe I gave too much for too long. And Kelly, maybe she just learned that from me. I hadn't seen my younger daughter, Tara, in almost a year. She left after a fight, over something I can't even remember now. But I kept thinking of her face that morning in the kitchen, how she warned me once. Kelly's not as sweet as you think, Mom. One day, you'll see. That day had come. The police didn't arrest Kelly. But the truth about what I nearly signed hit harder than any punishment could. Later that same afternoon, I sat in a softly lit room at the local police precinct. A young officer named Ramirez, barely older than my grandsons, offered me a cup of coffee I didn't drink. His voice was gentle, but the questions were clear. Can you walk me through what happened this morning at the bank? I told him everything. From the moment Kelly pushed the pen into my hand, to the moment I slipped that note to the teller. I expected him to look skeptical. To treat me like a confused old lady. But instead, he just nodded and said, "You did the right thing." Then he handed me a copy of the document Kelly and Dean had prepared. It wasn't just a routine update. It was a full transfer of my living trust, giving them complete control over my assets. Not just my savings, but my house, my investments, even my medical decisions. And the worst part? It was based on a clause declaring that I was mentally unfit to manage my own affairs. I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. I scanned the page again, this time with my teacher's eyes, the same ones that once caught every forged permission slip and plagiarized book report. And there it was, in black and white, a legal framework to take everything from me, signed and notarized, just waiting for my signature. This I whispered. This would have made me legally powerless. Officer Ramirez nodded. It's not uncommon, unfortunately. Elder financial exploitation is one of the fastest growing crimes in the country. A crime. That word stung, because part of me didn't want to see Kelly as a criminal. I wanted to believe she was lost, confused, desperate. But no, this wasn't a mistake. This was coordinated, cold, and calculated. I don't want to press charges, I said softly. Not yet. I just want to make sure this doesn't happen again. He gave me a list of elder law attorneys and highlighted one in particular, Ms. Dorsey. She's good, he said. And she doesn't let anyone push her clients around. I thanked him and stood to leave, my knees stiff but steady. Outside the station, the air was crisp, the kind that smells like rain even when it hasn't fallen yet. I held the envelope tight against my chest and looked up at the sky. Not in prayer, just thinking. 3 days ago, I was a mother who thought her daughter was trying to help. Today, I was a woman with a file full of evidence that said otherwise. I wasn't broken. I wasn't confused. I was awake. I found the old will in a dusty folder at the library, and with it, the memory of the daughter I'd almost forgotten. The next morning, I didn't go home. I went to the one place I used to feel calm when my world spun too fast, the public library. The local history room was quiet, cold, and smelled like old paper and lemon polish. I'd once brought Tara here for school projects when she was little. She used to trace her finger along the book spines and say the library smelled like secrets. I smiled at the memory, but it faded fast. I was here for answers now. I sat at one of the long oak tables, my purse filled with everything I'd grabbed from my home office, file folders, tax documents, my safe deposit key. And there, tucked between an old utility bill and a faded photo of George, was my original will. It was dated 5 years ago. Back then, everything was so clear. The will split my estate evenly between my 2 daughters. 50-50. No tricks, no drama. Kelly and Tara, side by side. But things changed. Tara left after our last Thanksgiving together. We'd argued. About what, I couldn't even remember now. Something small that turned sharp. She left early, packed up her things, and didn't come back. And I let her go. I told myself she needed space. That she'd call when she was ready. She didn't, and Kelly filled the silence. She stopped by more often, brought dinner, ran errands. At first, it felt like healing. Like we were finally growing close again. But now I saw it differently. That closeness wasn't about love. It was about access. In the margins of the old will, I had jotted down notes. Add Tara's student loan forgiveness. Adjust for grandkids' college fund. I'd planned, like any mother would, to leave something meaningful behind. Not just money, but protection. A legacy. And I'd forgotten it all. Because I'd been too focused on being needed by the child who was standing in front of me, and not the one who walked away. I traced the names on the paper with my finger, whispering their names like a prayer. Tara, Kelly, what would Tara say if she knew what had happened? Would she laugh bitterly and say, "Told you so"? Or would she just sigh and tell me to pack a bag? I didn't know, but I knew one thing. My silence had helped Kelly almost take everything. And it was time I started speaking again, even if it was just to a lawyer, a bank, or a piece of paper. As I packed up the files, I found one more thing tucked in the back of my purse, a birthday card Tara had sent me the year before we stopped talking. The handwriting was messy, rushed. But the message was clear. You always said strength doesn't mean shouting. Sometimes it means knowing when to walk away. But it's never too late to walk back. Maybe it wasn't. I didn't tell the women at church everything, but what I did say opened a door I never knew I needed. Every Wednesday afternoon, I go to the basement of St. Luke's for the Widows' Support Circle. We drink lukewarm coffee from styrofoam cups, talk about aching hips and recipe disasters, and sometimes, on braver days, we talk about loneliness. That day, I sat between Marla and Jean, trying to focus while someone read a devotional. But my mind was stuck in that bank office, in the stack of papers that almost erased me. After the prayer, we passed around cookies and took turns catching up. Marla asked how my girls were doing. I hesitated. Then I said, "Kelly's been helping me with some legal documents. It's been overwhelming." That's all I said. Marla stopped mid-sip of her coffee and set the cup down slowly. "Helping," she repeated. "What kind of help?" I shrugged. Just estate stuff. She and her husband want me to be prepared. I think they're worried about me managing everything on my own. Jean leaned in. Margaret, are you okay? Are they pressuring you? The word made me flinch. I don't know, I said honestly. It's just been a lot. I thought I was doing the right thing. But now I'm not sure who's making the decisions anymore. Marla scoffed. Oh, honey, that's not help. That's control. My son tried to get me to put him on my house deed last year. Said it would make things easier. I told him if he wanted a house, he could buy his own. The other women chuckled, but her eyes didn't leave mine. Jean nodded. They think we're easy targets because we're older. They think we won't fight back. Marla leaned closer. You know you can get a lawyer, right? Someone who works just with seniors. Elder law, they call it. I blinked. Elder law. I'd never heard the term. They help people like us, Marla continued. Not just with wills and stuff, but with power of attorney, fraud protection, even housing. My neighbor used one when her daughter tried to take her car. I took a napkin and wrote it down, elder law attorney. As we packed up, Marla touched my arm. You're not alone, Margaret. No matter what your daughter says. You don't owe anyone your peace of mind. That stuck with me. On the drive home, I thought about how many years I'd spent keeping my worries quiet. How many times I'd smiled through being dismissed, interrupted, overlooked. But now, a stranger in a police station and a friend in a church basement had both told me the same thing. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't alone. When I got home, I pulled out the business card Officer Ramirez had given me and dialed the number. A woman answered. Ms. Dorsey's office, she said. How can I help you? I cleared my throat. Yes, I said. I think I need someone who can help me protect what's mine. The lawyer's office smelled like old wood and lavender, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. Her name was Ms. Dorsey. Tall, silver-haired, with sharp eyes and a softer voice. The kind of woman who didn't need to raise her voice to be heard. Her office walls were lined with law books and photos of her with smiling seniors, some holding certificates, others just grinning in relief. I handed her the envelope from the bank, my old will, and the notes I'd started scribbling since everything began. She read quietly, flipping through each page with care. When she reached the trust transfer, her brow furrowed. This isn't just aggressive, she said. This is coordinated coercion. And the clause about mental incapacity? That's the red flag. She explained the language, how Kelly and Dean had attempted to activate a clause that would remove me as trustee of my own estate. If I had signed that document at the bank, I'd no longer have legal authority over my finances. They'd control everything. Did you ever give them any kind of power of attorney before? She asked. Years ago, I said, when George was sick. I named Kelly my medical proxy, just in case. But that was temporary. I never changed anything in my will. She nodded. We'll need to revoke everything. Start fresh. Ms. Dorsey worked quickly. She drafted a cease and desist letter, addressed to Kelly and Dean, formally demanding they stop any attempts to manage my finances or speak on my behalf. Then she prepared documents to revoke any existing powers of attorney, medical or financial, and created new ones I controlled. This is step one, she said. We're going to put everything in writing. And once we do, anyone who tries to undermine your capacity will have a real fight on their hands. I felt something I hadn't felt in days. Relief. Not because it was over. It wasn't. But because now I had someone on my side. Someone who didn't call me dramatic, or emotional, or forgetful. Someone who looked at me and saw a person, not a problem to solve. Before I left, Ms. Dorsey asked, Do you want to update your will? I hesitated. I think I need to talk to my other daughter first, I said. It's been a while. She smiled kindly. Take your time. Just know, whatever you want to leave behind, it should be your decision. No one else's. I walked out of that office with a folder full of new documents and a spine a little straighter than before. When I got home, Kelly's car was parked outside. I didn't stop. I drove right past it, parked at the grocery store, and sat there for a full hour until she gave up and left. I wasn't ready for the confrontation yet. But I was ready to protect myself. And that's more than I could say just a week ago. They didn't back down. Kelly showed up 2 days later, with rage in her eyes and a lawyer's letter in her hand. It was early morning when I heard the banging on the door. Not a knock, a demand. I peeked through the blinds and saw Kelly standing on my porch in full makeup, arms stiff at her sides. Dean stood behind her like always, arms crossed, jaw clenched, as if the driveway was his battlefield. I didn't want to open the door. Every cell in my body told me to pretend I wasn't home. But I was done hiding. When I opened it, Kelly's voice burst out before I could even say hello. "Why are you doing this to us?" No greeting, no apology, no pause. "I got the letter," she continued, shaking a white envelope at me. "Cease and desist? Revoking access? Are you serious, Mom?" Dean added from behind her, "You don't know what you're doing anymore. You're being manipulated." I crossed my arms and stood in the doorway. "No, Kelly. For the first time in a long time, I know exactly what I'm doing." She took a step forward and thrust a second envelope into my hands. "It's from our lawyer," she said sharply. "We're contesting your capacity. You've been erratic. You've refused help. We have a legal right to intervene." I didn't open it. I didn't have to. I'd seen enough betrayal for one morning. "You're trying to declare me unfit?" I asked. Dean's voice was flat. "We're trying to protect you. You've been making irrational decisions." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so perfectly predictable. The moment I stopped being their ATM, I became the problem. Not the mother who supported them. Not the woman who fed them, housed them, gave them everything. Just an obstacle to be moved. "I've been irrational?" I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Is it irrational to want to live the rest of my life in peace, without being stolen from?" Kelly's voice broke slightly. "You're hurting us. You hurt me first," I said. "You almost took everything I built. Without even asking." The silence hung heavy. Dean stepped forward. "We're going to file. You'll be served in a few days." "Do what you have to," I said. "But you'd better be ready for a fight." Then I closed the door, locked it, and leaned my back against it as the tears came, not from fear, but from a strange mixture of fury and heartbreak. For decades, I'd told myself I was building a legacy for my children. That all the sacrifices would mean something. That family mattered more than anything. But now, my own child stood on my porch, threatening to legally erase me. And I wasn't going to let that happen. Before they could take me to court, I took myself to the one person who knew me better than anyone, my doctor. Dr. Hensley has been my family physician for over 30 years. He delivered both of my daughters, treated George through his last winter, and kept me walking through arthritis and heartbreak. If anyone could speak to my mental clarity, it was him. I sat across from him in his small office, surrounded by medical charts and faded posters about cholesterol. He adjusted his glasses and gave me that gentle, amused look I knew so well. "So, what brings you in today?" he asked. "Your blood pressure's good. Your labs were excellent last month." I handed him the letter Kelly and Dean's lawyer had sent me. He read it slowly, then leaned back in his chair. "They're trying to declare you mentally incompetent," he said, eyebrows raised. I nodded. "They say I've been erratic. That I'm making dangerous decisions. All because I told them I didn't want them managing my finances." He shook his head slowly. "Margaret, I've seen early signs of dementia. I've seen cognitive decline. I've seen patients who forget their birthdays, who get lost coming home. You're not one of them. Can you prove that?" I asked quietly. He gave me a half smile. "I can do better. I'll document it, formally." We spent the next hour doing a full cognitive evaluation, memory tests, reasoning, problem solving. He asked me to spell words backwards, recite sequences, recall stories. I passed them all. At the end, he printed out a statement and signed it. "Patient exhibits no signs of cognitive impairment. She is fully capable of making independent financial and medical decisions." He handed it to me in a clear folder, like a shield. "Keep that with you," he said. "And if they try anything, let them come through me." I stood up, feeling taller than I had in weeks. "Thank you," I said. "Truly." He smiled. "Margaret, you've raised 2 daughters, managed a household, survived more loss than most people can imagine, and you're still driving yourself to appointments. Anyone who thinks you're not sharp doesn't know what sharp looks like." As I left the clinic, the sky seemed brighter. It was just a piece of paper. But in my hands, it felt like armor. Kelly and Dean had tried to paint me as weak, fragile, incapable. But they were about to find out that I was none of those things. I wasn't going to let them write my story. Not while I was still here to hold the pen. I called the daughter I hadn't spoken to in a year. and the sound of her voice was the beginning of everything I had lost. Tara answered on the third ring. There was a pause, then a cautious, trembling, "Mom?" I almost couldn't speak. Her voice hit something in me I'd locked away for months, maybe years. I swallowed hard and said, "Hi, sweetheart." Silence. Then a shaky breath. "Are you okay?" she asked. "No," I said honestly. "But I'm getting there." We spoke for over an hour. I told her everything, what happened at the bank, what Kelly and Dean tried to do, the documents, the threats, the lawyer. I thought she'd be angry. I thought she might gloat. But she didn't. Instead, she said, "Come stay with me, Mom. Just for a while. You shouldn't be alone right now." I didn't even have to think about it. That weekend, I packed a single suitcase. I left behind the house I'd built with George, the kitchen where I raised 2 girls, the bed where I'd cried myself to sleep too many nights to count. I left it all, but I didn't leave without taking back control. Before I walked out the front door, I posted a legal notice on the glass: "All financial access revoked. Any unauthorized entry will be prosecuted." My phone buzzed nonstop as I drove across state lines, calls, texts, voicemails. Kelly. Dean. Kelly again. I turned the phone off and kept driving. When I arrived at Tara's apartment, she opened the door and pulled me into a hug before I could say a word. Her arms were tight, trembling. Her voice cracked when she said, "I'm so sorry I wasn't there sooner." I whispered back, "You're here now." That night, I slept in Tara's guest room. No sounds of doors slamming. No footsteps pacing outside my bedroom. Just silence and the smell of lavender on clean sheets. The next morning, I made coffee while Tara sat at the table with her son, my grandson, Miles. He told me all about his science fair project while she packed his lunch. It was such an ordinary scene, and yet it felt like healing. I had almost forgotten what family could look like when there was no agenda. Just love. After Miles left for school, Tara poured herself a second cup of coffee and said, "What do you want to do next, Mom?" I looked at her, the daughter I'd nearly lost because I had been too scared to believe she'd still love me if I set boundaries with her sister. "I want to rewrite everything," I said. "My will, my power of attorney, all of it." Tara nodded, calm and steady. "Then let's do it together." Watching Tara with her son, I saw it clearly for the first time. Kelly didn't want to help me. She wanted to control me. It was a quiet morning. I sat at Tara's kitchen table, nursing my coffee while she braided Miles' hair into a small, neat twist he liked. He giggled the whole time, squirming, making silly faces in the mirror. And that's when it hit me. I had spent so many years convincing myself that Kelly's constant interference, her advice, her decisions made for me, her suggestions about my money, came from love. That she was the strong one, the responsible daughter. But sitting in Tara's home, watching how gently she guided her son's hands as he packed his school bag, how patiently she corrected him when he forgot his jacket, I realized something painful. Care is not control. Kelly never wanted the burden of caring for me. She wanted the benefits of owning me. She didn't call to check on my health. She didn't ask if I needed groceries or company. She didn't visit me unless something needed fixing or signing. The last time she cooked me a meal was the same week she asked for $10,000 to help with the business. And I had said yes. Over and over again, I had said yes. Because I thought that's what mothers did. I thought saying yes meant love. I thought being needed was the same as being valued. But love doesn't look like pressure. Love doesn't shove a pen into your hand at a bank and tell you to sign before you've read the paper. Love doesn't try to declare you mentally incompetent just because you said no. Tara sat down across from me, her tea steaming in front of her. She didn't say a word. Just waited. I cleared my throat. "I think I've been afraid," I said quietly. "Afraid that if I stopped giving, I'd stop mattering." Tara's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. She just reached for my hand and held it. "You've always mattered, Mom," she said. "Even when you didn't know it. Even when Kelly made you feel like you didn't." I looked down at our hands, hers warm, steady. Mine older, thinner, lined with years of sacrifice and silence. "I used to think strength meant staying quiet," I whispered. "Enduring things. Forgiving too quickly. Pretending not to notice." Tara nodded. "You were strong. But you don't have to be silent anymore." That's when I knew. I wasn't just fighting for money or documents or even justice. I was fighting for my name. My dignity, Myself. The woman I saw in the mirror now wasn't the one who allowed herself to be pushed aside. She was the woman who'd raised 2 daughters, buried a husband, paid off a house, and still managed to make the best pecan pie on the block. And she was done letting anyone rewrite her story. I rewrote everything, my will, my power of attorney, my future, and this time, no one but me held the pen. The notary office was quiet, tucked between a florist and a dry cleaner. I liked that it didn't feel like a courtroom or a lawyer's den. It felt ordinary, peaceful, and maybe that's why it felt so right. Tara came with me. She didn't speak for me. She didn't interrupt. She just sat beside me, reading her book while I signed page after page of documents, each one a piece of my life, now fully back under my control. Ms. Dorsey had drawn up everything I needed, a brand new last will and testament, naming Tara as my sole executor. A formal revocation of power of attorney for Kelly and Dean. A notarized statement of capacity, signed by Dr. Hensley, affirming my mental clarity. A letter of record outlining the incident at the bank and the attempted coercion. I mailed copies to my bank, to my doctor, to Kelly and Dean's lawyer. I even left one in my fireproof box with a note on top. These are my wishes. If anyone tries to say otherwise, this is the truth. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't revenge. It was protection. I thought I would feel sad, like I'd buried something, but instead, I felt light. Like I had walked out of a fog I didn't even know I was in. That afternoon, Tara and I went to the post office together. She dropped the envelopes in the outgoing box and said, "Now they know." I nodded. Now everyone knows. That evening, we made dinner together. Nothing fancy, chicken soup and cornbread. But it felt like a celebration. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't living at the mercy of someone else's decisions. I wasn't someone's burden. I wasn't someone's wallet. I was me. And I had chosen to live, not survive. As I sat at the table that night, Miles ran up and gave me a crumpled piece of paper. A drawing. Stick figures holding hands in front of a big yellow sun. "That's you, me, and Mom," he said proudly. I smiled and tucked it into my purse like it was a legal document. Because it was proof too. Proof that there was still love in this family. Still something worth fighting for. Still a future that didn't belong to my past mistakes. I had spent so many years afraid of losing my family. But now I knew the truth. Family isn't who demands from you. It's who stands with you when you finally say, enough. I ran into Dean at the grocery store, and he didn't even try to fake kindness anymore. He just showed me who he really was. It was the frozen food aisle. I was looking for the brand of pot pie George used to love. Don't ask me why, it just felt like a day for comfort food. I turned the corner and there he was. Dean. He was wearing his usual smug look, his tie loosened like he'd just come from a meeting that went his way. When he saw me, he didn't smile. He didn't greet me. He just said, "You think you won, don't you?" The way he said it made my skin crawl, like this was a game, and I was some opponent who'd just gotten lucky. I straightened my shoulders and looked him square in the eye. "I didn't W in anything," I said. "I reclaimed what was mine." He laughed, a cold, humorless chuckle. "You're old and alone, Margaret. People like you get forgotten. All that paperwork, all that noise, it won't change what's coming." I held my ground. "Then I suppose I'll be the one haunting you when that new will gets read." That stopped him. He blinked. "What?" I didn't flinch. "You didn't know, did you? I changed everything. New will, new executor, new power of attorney. Everything you and Kelly thought you had, gone." His face flushed, not from embarrassment, but rage. His lips tightened. "You're making a mistake." "No," I said calmly. "The mistake was trusting people who only see me as a checkbook." We stood there in the middle of the aisle, surrounded by frozen dinners and bagged vegetables, like it was the stage for a quiet war. "Kelly's devastated," he said, but even he didn't sound convinced. I raised an eyebrow. "Kelly is disappointed she lost control. That's not the same as being heartbroken." Dean stepped closer, lowering his voice. "This isn't over." I stepped back. "For me, it is." And with that, I turned my cart around and walked away. I didn't look back, not when I heard him mutter something under his breath, not when he stomped away toward the exit. I didn't care, because I wasn't afraid anymore. They could threaten, they could bluff, but they couldn't undo what I had done. My affairs were locked down. My legacy secured. My name, mine again. It wasn't about revenge. It was about dignity. And Dean? He could keep his tantrums. I had my peace. As I drove home, I thought about that drawing Miles gave me. The three of us under a big yellow sun. And I smiled. Because there was still light in my life. Still warmth. Dean and Kelly had bet on me staying silent. Staying scared. But they'd forgotten one thing. I raised fighters. Including myself. Kelly showed up to the mediation in full makeup and crocodile tears, but the truth didn't care how pretty she looked. The lawyer's conference room was cool and clinical, glass walls, modern chairs, a pitcher of lemon water on the table that no one touched. Ms. Dorsey sat beside me, calm and unshakable. Across from us sat Kelly and her new attorney. Dean didn't come. Kelly looked rehearsed. Hair freshly styled, makeup flawless, a soft pink blouse that screamed, concerned daughter. But her eyes, those eyes, were all calculation. Mom, she began, her voice breaking slightly, I don't understand why you're doing this. You're pushing us away. Ms. Dorsey didn't blink. We're here to go over the revised legal documents, not to perform. Kelly's attorney cleared his throat. We'd like to express concern about Ms. Whitmore's sudden and drastic changes to her estate plan. The timing suggests emotional manipulation. Ms. Dorsey slid a folder across the table. Included in that file is a cognitive assessment from a licensed physician, notarized statements, and a record of coercive behavior supported by bank staff and eyewitnesses. Kelly's face turned a shade redder with every word. I leaned forward. My voice didn't shake. I'm not punishing you, Kelly, I said. I'm protecting myself. She slammed her hand on the table. You think Tara didn't put you up to this? She always hated me. I didn't respond to the accusation. I didn't have to. Because here's the thing about abusers, they always think it's about someone else. That someone must have planted the idea. That you couldn't possibly have decided on your own to fight back. I made every decision myself, I said, evenly. Because I finally saw what you were doing. You used my love to make me vulnerable. Her lawyer shifted uncomfortably. Even he seemed to sense the tide was against them. Kelly's voice cracked. I'm your daughter. I met her gaze. And you tried to take my life, while I was still living it. Silence. No one moved. Ms. Dorsey closed her folder. Unless there's a legal basis to contest these documents, which there isn't, this meeting is over. Kelly didn't stand. She just sat there, breathing hard, hands clenched in her lap. Her mask had cracked. For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes, not the fear of losing money, but of losing power. And she was right to be afraid. Because the woman sitting across from her wasn't the mother she used to control. I stood up, my spine straight, my breath steady. If you want to rebuild a relationship with me someday, Kelly, I said, you'll have to start with honesty. Not paperwork. And then I walked out. Not with anger, not with regret, but with a peace that comes only when you know the truth is finally louder than the lies. At Tara's house, with my lawyer and my grandkids around me, I finally said what I should have said years ago, enough. We met in Tara's living room. Not a courtroom, not a bank, just family, at least, the part of it that still believed in love without conditions. Ms. Dorsey was there, seated at the dining table with her folders. Tara stood beside her, steady as ever. My grandkids were in the next room, giggling over something on the tablet, unaware of the storm their mother had just faced down. And then Kelly walked in. She didn't speak at first. Just looked around the room like she didn't recognize any of it, like this was someone else's family now. Dean wasn't with her. I wasn't surprised. I'm here, she said quietly, clutching her bag like a shield. Good, I replied, because there are things I need to say, things you need to hear. She sat down across from me, the distance between us more than just a table. I pulled out a letter I had written the night before. I didn't trust myself to speak from memory. I needed every word to be clear. I read aloud. Kelly, you are my daughter. I loved you from the moment I knew you existed. I raised you, protected you, gave you everything I could, and maybe more than I should have. She looked away, but I kept going. I forgave you when you lied. I gave when I had nothing left. I excused behavior that hurt me because I wanted to believe you were still the little girl I once held in my arms. But love is not permission. And motherhood is not surrender. Kelly's eyes filled, but no tears fell. Still, she said nothing. When you tried to take my estate without my consent, when you pushed me to sign documents I didn't understand, you weren't acting out of love. You were acting out of entitlement. You may not see it that way. You may never admit it. But I know the truth now, and that's enough for me. I folded the paper. You are no longer part of my financial future. You are not my trustee. You are not in my will. What I have, and what I leave behind, will go to the people who protect me, not the ones who use me. She opened her mouth, but I raised my hand. No more excuses, Kelly. No more tears. No more twisting things so I feel guilty for setting boundaries. Ms. Dorsey slid a copy of the finalized will across the table. This is done, I said. And so is the part of our relationship that made me feel small. Kelly stood, slowly. She looked at Tara, who didn't flinch, and then back at me. She said only 2 words, "You'll regret this." I looked her dead in the eye. No, I regret staying silent for so long. I regret letting you think love meant control. But this? I gestured to the family around me, the protection, the clarity. This is peace. And peace is what I chose. Kelly tried to fight the will, but the truth was already sealed. I moved into my new place with my head high and no more secrets. A week after the family meeting, my lawyer called with an update. Kelly had filed an appeal. She's trying to challenge the will, Ms. Dorsey said, her voice calm as ever. Claiming undue influence, diminished capacity, the usual grasping at straws arguments. I didn't panic, because by then, every record was in place. Dr. Hensley's evaluation, the notarized statement, witnesses from the bank, everything Kelly tried to erase had already been preserved, by me. And when the court reviewed it all, they ruled in my favor without even needing a hearing. Just like that, the fight was over. She didn't call. She didn't write. She just disappeared. Dean, too. I heard they moved out of state. Something about starting over. But I wasn't interested in gossip anymore. That part of my life, the part where I lived on eggshells, hoping not to upset anyone, was done. I moved into a lovely little unit at an independent senior community. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. 2 bedrooms, plenty of sunlight, and a balcony just big enough for a rocking chair and my morning coffee. Tara came by every weekend. Sometimes she brought miles, sometimes she just brought leftovers. She never pressured, never hovered. She just made space for me. I joined a book club at the community center, started volunteering with the library's literacy program, and even got back into knitting. Turns out, you never forget how to cast on, just like you never forget how to start over. Some of the women I met asked about my family. I told them the truth, simply and without shame. My daughter tried to take advantage of me, I said once. But I stopped her. I had to. They nodded. No judgment. Just quiet, knowing looks from women who'd been through their own kinds of heartbreak. One afternoon, as I was pinning laundry on the community line, Marla from church dropped by. She looked around the apartment and smiled. "You did it," she said. "You got out." I nodded. "Yes, I did." She leaned in and whispered, "You'd be surprised how many don't." I believed her. Because it's hard to imagine your child, your own blood, would betray you. Harder still to believe it, even when all the evidence is in your hands. And maybe hardest of all? Choosing to walk away anyway. But I did. And every sunrise that filters through my new window reminds me, I didn't lose anything. I reclaimed it. I didn't break. I rose. On a garden bench, with a friend beside me and flowers in bloom, I finally said it out loud. I don't regret fighting back. It was early spring. The air smelled like rain, and the roses in the courtyard had just started blooming again, soft pinks and fiery reds that reminded me life keeps going, no matter how hard the winter. I sat on a bench under the pergola with a woman named June, a new friend from the community center. She was quiet, kind, the kind of person who let silence settle without rushing to fill it. She'd been through something similar. Her niece had tried to help her sell her house without permission. Took her months to untangle the mess. "I heard about what happened with your daughter," she said gently. I nodded. Word travels. She waited a moment, then asked, "Do you regret any of it?" It was the kind of question I used to dread. Because regret clings, doesn't it? It shows up in the quiet hours. The should-haves. The if-onlys. But now? I looked out at the garden, the sun warming my knees, and answered honestly. I regret trusting someone who saw me as a bank account, not a mother. I regret mistaking control for care. But I don't regret fighting back. June nodded slowly. Good. I smiled, running my fingers along the ribbon tied around my walking cane, a soft lavender one Tara gave me last Christmas. My talisman, I guess. A little reminder that I still stand, even if a bit slower than before. She leaned back. It's brave, what you did. Necessary, I said. Brave came after. We sat in silence for a while, just watching the breeze play through the garden. A few other residents passed by, one waved, another offered us tea from a thermos. I used to think peace was about everything staying quiet. No waves, no confrontations, no drama. But now I know, peace is choosing yourself when everyone else wants a piece of you. It's saying, this is mine. My life, my name, my voice. And then holding that line, no matter who tries to cross it. Kelly never apologized. She may never understand what she did or why it broke something between us. That's her choice. Mine was different. I chose to protect myself. To rebuild. To tell the truth, even when it made people uncomfortable. Because if there's one thing I've learned after 73 years, it's this. It's never too late to reclaim your peace. Not at 20, not at 50, and certainly not at 73, on a garden bench with the sun on your face and a friend beside you.